Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 74. I am your host, Barney Smith of storycomic.com, and we are excited to have with us the highly talented and acclaimed artist, author, speaker, and consultant, Corrina Thurston. Corrina,
hi.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. This is
Thanks
exciting
for having
stuff.
me.
And I gotta say, of all the different, when we were talking about before we went on the air, before, like, you were probably geographically the closest guest I've actually had on the show. So
and we didn't really know that, but yeah.
Didn't really know that, yeah.
Things you learn.
That's right. When I discovered you when we're both a part of the Vermont Authors Fest Facebook group. And when I saw some of your stuff there, and you just recently came out with a book as of last December, and it looked really intriguing, really exciting book, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But before we kind of jump right in head first, because you have your resume, your CV is extremely extensive. You are a Renaissance artist when it comes to a lot of stuff. You do speakers, you do classes, you write books. You are a prolific colored pencil artist, and we'll see some of those images. But before we jump right into it, you want to talk to people how you kind of fell head first into the art world, I guess.
So migraine first into the. So it's a kind of a different story than a lot of people. I didn't do artwork ever since I was a kid. I wasn't an artist that was like, prodigy at the age of 5, that kind of artist. I liked art, but I wasn't, I didn't really do much with it. And then I went to college at the age of 18, and I was going to school for biology and anthropology. So not super art related. But within my freshman year, I actually got really, really sick. And then I kept thinking I was going to get better, right? I was, okay, I'll just push through. And I'll get better. Right. And I just kept having thing after thing, and it just kept getting worse. And I ended up having to medically withdraw from college in my freshman year. I tried going back, and that didn't work. I was still really, really sick. I was just too stubborn to kind of give up quite yet. So anyway, I had to withdraw again, and then I was mostly bedridden for the next 6.5 years. Right. So I had really severe, just a migraine 24/7, if you can imagine. Wow. I had insomnia so badly that I was sleeping probably like 20 to 40 minutes a night. Wow. And it lasted for years. So I was like hallucinating and shaking and having these panic attacks daily, just in my own home. And I couldn't go out and do anything. I mean, I was literally in this room in my parents' house, and it was like a half basement room, so it was partially in the ground. So it was kind of darkened for me. And for the first couple of years, I was just in there. It was me and my cat, and there wasn't really anything I could do. My migraine was so bad that I couldn't even watch television or read, or use my computer very much, because the visual, aspect of it, it just was so painful. I couldn't do that. And I couldn't really comprehend, and the lack of sleep and everything, it was really, I wasn't all there, and so I started, I'm not really sure why, but I picked up a pencil one day, and it was like a number 2 pencil that I found on the floor. And I went and found this like piece of poster board, pretty big piece of poster board that was in my closet from high school. And I was like, whatever, that will do. And I dragged it up onto the bed with me and just started kind of sketching, And it's funny because the thing I sketched was a figure. It was a nude female. And I was like, okay, I'll just kind of do this. And I could do it a little bit at a time and just sort of distract myself for the first time in like 2 years, from the pain and from the just like misery and depression and everything else, And so I did that, and I was like looking at it, and I was like, this is cool. Like, this turned out pretty well. but it would look so much cooler in color. You know, like my life is so like dark and depressing and like horrible. Like I would love some bright color, like just some sort of color. And I was like, there's no way I can do paint. You know, like I'd have to set up, I'd have to clean brushes. I physically could not like do that. And I was like, I can't do pastels. Like they're going to be all over the bed and my cats and, you know, like it'd be everywhere. And so I was like, I wonder if colored pencil would do it. You know, like I wonder what that would be like. And I had seen a couple images of people who had done colored pencil in a really like vibrant way. And I was like, really? Like, is this, you know, I'm thinking of it in like the third grade, like sketch style, you know, they're like, okay, I'll try it. So I bought like a box of Prismacolors that was like, I don't know, 48 colors or something. And then I just went to town on that piece and tried to use as many colors as I possibly could. And so I put her on like a green lily pad. Her skin was purple, you know, her hair was orange. And I mean, it looked kind of ridiculous and like water, you know, blue water around her. It really wasn't very good, but it was really interesting. And I just kept going and kept doing layers and layers until there was really vibrant color. And I was like, that's okay. You know, colored pencil can do that. So then I immediately moved from there to my wildlife artwork.
Okay.
So, and started drawing right away for wildlife. And some of my first pieces, I still exhibit them. Like they turned out well enough where I'm okay with people still seeing them. So, but I mean, I don't know. I progressed very quickly. Let me put it that way.
Right.
And then it was after that I started doing some stuff in black and white too. So, which is opposite of what normal people would do, right? Like you usually start in black and white and pencils and then go to color. But I like to do things the hard way. But yeah. So, I started drawing after that, and I just kind of kept going.
So how did that? So you're bedridden for 2 years. What was that conversation?
Yeah.
So was it like did you like kind of like walk up to your parents and say, "Hey, next time you go out, can you buy some colored pencils?" Like how did that conversation go?
Let's see. It's hard to remember because my insomnia was so bad that my memory is just like. Right. From lots of, I have like flashes and stuff, but I'm missing lots of memory pieces from that time,
right.
Which probably is a good thing, but it's also kind of difficult. And then I'm pretty sure I had seen like a book or something at some point before. Right. And I'm pretty sure I had my mom go online, but I was like, I remember Prismacolor. I remember the word Prismacolor. I was like, go and check that out. And we did, and we just got whatever the biggest box they had, like medium-sized box that they had so that I could just play around. Cause I didn't know if it was going to be that one drawing, or something more, I had no idea. And then when I started drawing and I was like, oh, this seems kind of good, like having no like art background and not having gone to art school, not having gone to anything and being totally socially isolated for those first couple of years and continuing after that for another few years. All I had was, my parents and my siblings to like show my pieces to. And I'd be like, what do you think? And here I am, this like horribly sick, like, dysfunctional person. They're like, it's great. Of course it's great, and then later on, a couple years later, my sister, she was like, I didn't want to tell you this when you were sick, like horribly sick, but now that you're like a little bit better, she's like, well, I'm really glad that you are good at drawing because I was like putting on like ready to put on this face of like, it's great, just in case it was terrible, she's like, and I'm a terrible liar. Like, I'm terrible. And so I feel like you would have been able to read through it. And I'm really glad that it was actually good.
Yeah. I mean, your stuff has been, we're just looking at here, your two capuchin monkey prints here.
Yep.
So this is all
in my son's bedroom. He likes that one.
So did you, when you put this when you're doing these, were these references from photographs or how did you?
Yeah, a lot of them are. A lot of them are either like some of them are multiple photographs, that are kind of, I use different parts from different photographs. And some of them are from my photograph. A lot of them are from my photographs, or I have photography friends that are like, hey, here's this whole batch of, wildlife photography I just took. Feel free to, use whatever you want. So like the kingfisher, for example, there's no way I ever would have gotten that photograph of the kingfisher like popping out of the water.
Right.
And so I had a photographer friend, Wendy Salisbury, who she let me use that image, and I played with the colors and made him successful with a little fish in his mouth, things like that. But it was, a lot of them, I get those details from photos.
And so like, a lot of artists would learn in school that did you ever kind of like do the grid pattern and kind of trace it?
I did used to do that. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I still do that sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. Especially for commissions where you're like, okay, this eye has to be exactly right, or the person's gonna, know that their child or whatever I'm, drawing is gonna be a little bit off. So I definitely use it for that too.
Right. And so looking at your website, you now, years later, a decade later or so, that you now do the you work with other mediums, correct?
A little bit, yeah. Every once in a while, I like to mix it up.
Yeah.
The one I'm working with most now is still pencil, but it's graphite mixed with a little bit of colored pencil.
Okay.
I'm doing a series right now of like wildlife that's endangered, and they're much bigger pieces. So I've done an elephant so far, an African elephant, a black rhino, and a lion cub, and I'm working on a sea turtle. And when I get enough of them done, there's the elephant.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a fan favorite. It was one of the first ones I did with this kind of, it's graphite and like black and white colored pencils to get the black really black, and so that was the first one I did of that kind of series. I was just sort of playing around with it, and I really liked it, so I kept going. And they're much bigger than my typical pieces too. And so when I get enough of them done, I'm hoping to do an exhibit of just those like big black and white images. And maybe even like a traveling exhibit of those, and have information next to them about the endangered species, that you can learn how, what organizations are supporting them, and, that kind of stuff. But it's been really fun. It's been cool. It's a little bit different, but it's also really similar.
Right.
And it's been really fun. So,
because you also do not just wildlife. I mean, this is, one of your passions, but also you do, as you mentioned, how much of the work you do now is now through, people hiring you to do projects
like commissions and stuff.
I
only, because of my health, so I'm still not 100% healthy, especially this past year. I've been really, so after I gave birth to my son Josiah 16 months ago, I have had a roller coaster of health issues with like thyroid and other things. And so especially like this past year, I haven't taken almost any, commissions and stuff.
Right.
So I limit the amount of commissions I take. And that's because they limit the amount of money I can make off of them, and they take a long time for me to do. Right. So I only do a handful a year usually. And lots of times it's like a pet portrait or a portrait for someone of their child, or, something like that. I've done a few kind of weird ones. I did an ultrasound for someone one time. They wanted it bigger, and then, kind of like I did it with like charcoal and stuff. And I was like, okay, I've never met your wife before, but I'm, drawing the inside of her womb. And so I've done a few nudes, for people. And I've done a couple paintings of my own of like sunsets and stuff, just to sort of mix it up. Every once in a while, colored pencil is just a little too time intensive and very detailed. I mean, it just takes, it takes hundreds of hours to do a piece. And every once in a while, you just need to be like, okay, I need to just like paint a canvas, just mix it up, or like do charcoal with my fingers, like I need to do something that's loose and just sort of different,
right?
Because it can get pretty intense, So.
Right. And you wrote a book. You wrote a book called, How to Build, Your Art Business.
Yeah.
Now, a part of that is, a part of, there it is right there.
Came prepared.
That came out in 2017. And is there a part of that when you talk about any aspects of that, it talks about commissions, like the time you put in needs to reflect.
Yeah, for sure.
Reflect that.
So I talk about it because it's how to build your art business with limited time or energy, which is what a lot of us are. but me too, like with the chronic health problems, I have very limited time and energy to do any of this work. Right. And I do a lot of different things, like you said. So it's, I talk about, if you're going to do commissions, if that's going to be one of your like main parts of your art business, that's fine. But you need to remember that, you have to be the person doing it, right? And it's going to take a certain amount of time to do those things. So you're limiting how much you can do. And so, you want to pay yourself well for that time and work. But you also limit, if you say you make, $1,000 per piece and you can do 50 of them a year, like then it's $50,000. That's your thing. That's what you're limited to if that's what you're going to be doing. Right. And you also need to find those, have time to find those clients or have them find you, which sometimes can be easy and sometimes can be really hard. It kind of ebbs and flows. But for me, I only take a handful of those because they do limit that amount of time. And in my contract with my clients, I always write in, they can't put me on a deadline just because of health problems. Right. So that takes that pressure like off right away. And then 2, I get the rights to the drawing. Mm-hmm. So I use their image that they give me and I, create the piece for them. They get the original drawing. And then I get the rights to use that piece for greeting cards or, whatever prints or put it on pillows or any of my other products that I make. And that way my commission piece can still make more money. I want to keep my commissions reasonably priced, Right. And so then I can do that and still potentially make more money, for years, off of those pieces. And if it's like a really cute dog or something, then I can make greeting cards and things like that, put them in a calendar, all that kind of stuff and keep, continue to make money off of those. Right. And so far people have not had a problem with that. I've made a couple of exceptions for things that are portraits. But, in general. And
would you recommend in situations like that where you would negotiate to say, hey, listen, if you want to make sure you retain the entire image and I don't use it for any reproduction values, it'll cost you more.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, and most people have not had a problem with that. So I haven't had to deal with that too much, but yeah, that's exactly what I would do. Yep.
And depending on the medium, would that factor in, like you said, using colored pencils
is
a lot more time?
My black and white pieces take fewer pencils to use and just way less time, not way less, but less time. And the colored pencil pieces are definitely more expensive. Right. And I tend to do them less frequently for commissions because it's just more challenging and just, it's much more time consuming. And because I'm so limited with my time, I want to be able to kind of whip them out a little bit when it's a commission, get it done, get it off my plate, get that happy customer and then move on to whatever I'm working on. Right. A lot of my pieces are just pieces that I do for my own, pleasure and hope that my audience likes. So, yeah.
So, would you also, when it comes to those questions of, setting up a commission, do you ever have those kind of like those, honest conversations and say, listen, I know you want it this big, but it's kind of out of your price range. Do you have to kind of say, listen,
So to all the artists out there, when you're doing anything commission based, you're going to come across so many different types of people. So you're going to have the people who want you to do it for free because they think it's super easy, right? You're just drawing. Like, it's your pastime. It should be fine. It'll take you like an hour. Yeah. People who don't understand like how much effort goes into it and time, and then it takes you away from doing other work that could make you money.
Right.
And then you're going to have the people who try to negotiate to a lower price and that kind of stuff. And then you're going to have the people who are like, oh, I don't care what it costs. Go ahead and, like, you're like, okay. And then, lots of different things. And sometimes you have people who send you an image where you're like, where's the dog you want me to draw in this picture? Like this blurry, like little dot over here is the image. And they're like, I can't do that. Like in my contract, it's like only, I need to say that the image is okay, to approve of the image. It has to be a high quality image to work from because I can only draw what I see.
Right.
And I always have them give me 50% of the commission rate in upfront. Right. And that's non-refundable. So if they don't like the piece at the end, okay, they'll keep the other 50%, right? But I get at least that 50%, no questions asked. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. I know a lot of artists who have been gypped over and over again by people who don't pay at all. And right. I don't start a piece until I have that payment. And that's just, I want to be paid at least for like the materials and stuff that are going into it. So, right. And I think that's really important. And having contract in general is really important. And it doesn't have to be like complicated. It can just be you write it up right in the like 5 things that you want to make sure, and have them sign and date it and, send it back to you. Like that's all it really needs to be. And I think it's a really good idea. A lot of artists are just like, oh, sweet, a commission, like this person's going to pay me $400 to do this piece. Okay. And just go and do it. And cause they're excited to have that work, and you gotta kind of stop and, cover your bases there because people will try to undercut you. They'll try to get whatever they can for as little as they can. Right. And people won't value your time necessarily as much as they should because they don't understand it.
Right.
So.
And do you like, throughout the process of the commission process, is there a point of no return where you say, you show them a sketch or something ahead of time and say, now we're getting more permanent here. So
yeah, well, it's hard. It's especially hard with colored pencil because you can't erase it. Right. It's like working with pen or something, like once you get that layer down, like it's going to be pretty challenging to change it at all. And especially if they think that like, okay, if they want to make it a little darker or something, you might be able to kind of add some more layers. But if they want to make something lighter, it'd be pretty challenging. Mm-hmm. Or if they want to change any sort of like aspect of it, that's not going to happen. So, I definitely send them, updates as it goes along, and then hope for the best. But yeah, there's a point at which you just like, I can't change that,
Right. So you, as you're doing your, mainly your colored pencil stuff that, and you showed the book before in 2017, you came out with a book, called How to Build Your Art Business. And then in 2018, you came out as How to Communicate, effectively for artists. So what was the inspiration behind this? Was there some parallel track that was happening while you're doing your art? While you're working on commission. So talk to us a bit about how those parallel tracks kind of complemented each other.
So that's 2017. Yeah. So in 2014, I was finally diagnosed. So I had gone like 6.5 years of going to see doctor after doctor after doctor. And in 2014, I was finally diagnosed, at least partially. We found out later I have more problems, but at least partially diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease and chronic Bartonella, which is another tick-borne illness. And it was like 2 types of pneumonia and Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune illness attacking my thyroid. And so we finally had something to work on, and for the 6.5 years before, like for the first 2 years, you still have hope that you're going to get better. You're like, okay, next year, maybe I'll go back to school. okay, next year, maybe I'll be well enough where I can go back to school. You know, like you just keep trying to keep that hope alive. Right. And then after 2 years or so, where you're just getting worse, you know, you're not getting any better, the light at the end of the tunnel kind of disappears.
Right.
And that's when I started drawing.
Yeah.
So that helped me kind of stay sane, you know, through some of that. But then in 2014, it was like this little glimmer, you know, kind of down there where I was like, okay, I'm still sick, you know, I'm still feeling horrible, but at least now we have some sort of diagnosis. We have something we can work with. And so I started to get a little bit better as we started long-term treatment, which I'm still on. And so in 2015, the next year, I decided to register as a business, and really try to make, you know, turn my artwork into a business. It was like the very end of 2015. And in the beginning of 2016, I went to like a 2-day class. I did 2 of them. I did one in Vermont with the Vermont Arts Council put on a 2-day thing about, you know, creating an art business, all the legal kind of things you have to do. And then I went to one in DC, which thankfully I felt okay, but I had my mom like escort me to there, and like I was sitting there like trying to take notes and had my dark sunglasses on, you know, like that creepy person in the corner, like, and then, and then, you know, and I'd go back to the hotel at night, and then I'd go back, and it was terrible. But anyway, so during that, so it was put on by the Arts Business Institute. Okay. It's run by Carolyn Edlund, and she was having consultations at the end of it for people. And they're like 20-minute consultations that she would just kind of, you know, talk to you about what you're doing and tell you if it was a good idea or not. And so she was very blunt, and she was great. And so I signed up for one of those because I was like, I'm here. I just might as well do it. You know, my anxiety was like through the roof because I just was so like, my anxiety was just bad all the time. I mean, I was having panic attacks at home, you know, like, let's just do it. And so I was talking to her about, you know, here I'm sick, you know, I'm trying to do this and this and this. Like, I'm trying to build my artwork up despite health, you know, things. And so everything I was saying, she was like, yeah, that sounds really good, blah, blah, blah. And then she called me up like a couple days later, and she's like, can I interview you? And I was like, okay. And she's like, no, I think what you were saying about having this like limited time and energy is really important. And it's not just you, you know, and I think what you were trying to do like passive income and different, you know, kind of shying away from some commission stuff, you know, like some of those things is really good. And I think we could, you know, a lot of people would be really interested in that. So we did like a blog interview, and it ended up being one of our top 10 posts of 2016. So wow. There had a lot of people that were reading it and really interested in it. And that kind of triggered the idea for the book, is that like, okay, I'm not the only one out there trying to do this, you know? And I just kept thinking about it. So then I took a journal and just started like brainstorming, you know, some ideas and things. And I sort of planned out chapter by chapter. And then I just sat down and wrote for like 6 days, you know, and I just, my fingers were cramping, you know, I was like, this seems like it's important because it's just coming out of me, you know, like it's just flying. And it was really good. And it helped a lot of people. And I got some beta readers, you know, to help me read through it and see what they thought. And, you know, some of them are still my biggest fans and read the book, and, you know, some of their testimonials, you know, are in the front, and for a little while, it was the number 1 bestseller on Amazon in the art business category. Oh, wow. Yeah. Which not too long after I launched it, which was really amazing. And there's a lot of anecdotes about, you know, this is why I suggest doing it this way, you know, but it's helped a lot of people, which is great. And then the second book came from, everyone was talking about how I write, which is just like very conversational. Okay. they're like, man, I feel like I'm just sitting down and having a conversation with you, you know, like they're so easy to read. And like, it's just, you know, you've simplified everything so well, and, you know, things like that. And so, and I get complimented a lot from galleries and people like that in the media about my proposals, and, you know, really any sort of like communication about how clear it is, how articulate, how, you know, whatever. And so the next book came about, the How to Communicate Effectively for Artists and Creatives, from all of those kind of conversations and things like that. And it talks a lot about like how to make a great artist statement, you know, how to, you know, do some grant writing, you know, what's the best option for that, and how to reach out to your local media, how to, you know, how to do all these different things. And I think it's even more important than the first book, actually, you know, because it's all about like, it's all about marketing. Communication is marketing, you know? And so the way that you speak, the way that you, your marketing materials, you know, your pamphlets, your website, your, you know, all of these different things are all communication. And so the better that you can communicate who you are, you know, and why your work is interesting or different, the better you're going to have for sales and, you know, customers and clients coming back and talking about you, you know, that word of mouth. It's all about communication. So really the book is how to effectively market your work.
And so after that, and so that came out in 2018, and this was happening also parallel. So from a like a proactive nature to this, or something where, as you say, you have limited time. How does that affect you also with, you know, limited passion in the different aspects of what you do, as from being a speaker to being now at this point in time, being an author, and also being an artist? How were you able to balance these? And was that actually a benefit for you to have different works in progresses at the same time?
Yeah, it's good for me, I think, because my brain goes in lots of different directions. I'm not good at doing one thing at a time, and I'll get burned out pretty quickly. So I'm not a very typical artist in how I started, or, you know, any other way really. But I can't do it every day, you know, and physically I can't do it every day or every month even anyway. Right. But I get really excited about a piece, and I'll start it and I'll work on it. And then once I'm done, I'm a little bit burnt out. So it's great to be able to go then to the marketing materials that I need to create, or to a speech, or write some into my book. So this past year, when I was really not doing well, you know, I focused a lot on writing the third book, you know, the How to Crush Self-Doubt. And it went along with my TED Talk, you know, which talks about a lot of similar things. And it just sort of, it melds them together in a way that, you know, I can work on one and then take a break, and it kind of come at the next piece with fresh eyes, you know, and then work on the next thing. It means that sometimes I go a couple months without doing one or the other, you know, because I'm focusing heavily on a launch of a book, or you know, this or that. But sometimes those breaks are good, you know. Sometimes you come back with this kind of renewed, you know, energy for whatever it is you're doing, or if it's writing, or, I mean, I haven't given, because of COVID, you know, my speeches for the whole year were like thrown out. So I haven't given a speech since right before my last workshop that I did was like 4 days before my due date. I went right up to the edge there. And I haven't given like a speech or a workshop since then. And so that's the other thing about having multiple things that I do, is that I, you know, even taking out the speeches, I was okay, you know, I had other things to fall back on, you know. And I tried to adapt by creating masks with my artwork on it, and, you know, kind of adapting to the situation, doing more online, things like that. But it was, I just sort of shift from one to the next depending on how my head is doing. I still have a chronic headache every day for the last 12 and a half years.
Wow.
It's not always a migraine anymore, which is fantastic. But, for a normal person, like I don't sleep well and I have a headache every day
Right.
and some fatigue and, things like that. It's still a big struggle, but it's nice to be able to switch back and forth depending on how I feel.
Right. I mean, and also too is like, talking to other, talking to other artists and stuff, during, the pandemic, it's almost everybody I talked to, as soon as lockdown happened last year, be like, great, I can start working, and like I can do all these kind of projects I've been waiting for. And then and then all of a sudden when you talk to them, it's like, I just don't have the energy. Like everybody.
We're all like depressed and anxious and can't sleep and can't focus. I mean, it's terrible. I think that's part of why, like, the third book, the one that just came out, and this one, I think it's a great time for it to come out because, I mean, it's not just about self-doubt, it's about depression and anxiety and things like that, and how those can relate to self-doubt, right? And it's all these techniques that like can help those things that are really simple techniques. Like you were talking about the gratitudes, doing 10 gratitudes a day, writing them down, and how it can help change your perspective on life to focus, you're training your brain to try and find and look for like all those little positive things in your life instead of dwelling on all the negative things. Right. So there's a lot of like retraining your brain. And I think a lot of people need that right now because we're going to be coming out of this quarantine, where we've all been kind of locked up and a lot of people are like so excited, but then once they get out into the world, they're going to be anxious like they've never been before, and like worried about stuff and just feeling really uncomfortable in their own skin. And we've all been very depressed and very, there's been a lot of different issues that have been brought up by this whole thing. A lot of people have had people who have died, I mean, it just haven't been able to see loved ones for, over a year. Right. And it's just been really, really challenging no matter what your situation. And so I think this book, based on what the readers who have read it so far are telling me, I think it's a really important. And I think that I think it could help a lot of people. A lot of the people who have read it so far bought extra copies to give and like send me messages, and they're like, I'm going to give this to my kids. I'm going to give this to my sister. I'm going to give this to, like, this is going to help people. And it's interesting because like I have suffered from depression and stuff for quite a long time because of situations and health, and just insomnia and everything else. But I can't really take antidepressants. They make me suicidal. So over and over and over again, we discovered that. And so that's really challenging. So like, what do you do? If you can't take the sleep meds because those are most of those are antidepressants, so you're still not sleeping, you can't take, any of these medicines. Right. So instead, I mean, that's how I learned all these different techniques. That's how research and experimentation, and just time and failure and relearning stuff. And I just learned how to retrain my brain to kind of flip things around. Because like at first, when you're bedridden and you're in like horrible agonizing pain every single day for years, you read somewhere or someone tells you or something that, gratitude will help you, and you're like, really? Like I like can't function. Like I am stuck in a room by myself all day long and I'm in excruciating pain. Like there's no point to my life, like nothing was good, and I was like, this is horrible. Like I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Like this is horrible. And there was no light at the end of the tunnel, right? There was nothing for so many years. And then to be like, gratitude will help you feel better. And I'm like, I don't think you know what you're talking about, but it's kind of stuck with me, and I started kind of thinking about it more and more. I write about this in my book, but it's like suddenly one night, my mom's like bringing me dinner because I couldn't make food. I couldn't do any of that. So she brings down the dinner to like my darkened room. She's whispering, because my migraine's so bad that we had to whisper to talk to each other sometimes. Yeah. And usually I just like eat the food, and be like, thank you, And instead that night, I was like, I guess I'm really thankful, that I have someone to make me food. Like healthy. My dad, does the cooking, and I was like, the healthy, like nutritional food. And I'm glad I have my mom to come down and talk to me, that to have some, sort of socialization. I mean, I'm glad I have my parents to talk to, even though we have to whisper. I'm glad I have a place to live, because otherwise I would have died. I mean, I would have died without my parents.
Right.
There's no question. I mean, there's just no question. Right. And then, I was glad that I had like warm, I was really cold all the time. I was glad I had warm blankets, and a bed to lie on. I was grateful for, hot water and indoor plumbing. I was grateful for, I just started going around, and the sunglasses that I could wear, and like, all these different things, my cats for coming in and distracting me. And, so it was interesting, because I remember that night really distinctly, and it was just this flip, So every day after that, I'd be like, okay, I'm grateful that I did that drawing on the wall. I'd frame them and put them on the wall to remind myself that like I did that. I'm good for something. Because it was like the only thing that I was able to do at all for years. And it was good. I was like, okay, I can produce something, because otherwise I just felt like this huge burden on all the people around me. I just felt like I was just this huge weight of guilt. Right. And I talk about guilt in the book too. And it's unnecessary, because I didn't do anything wrong, but you still feel that guilt, if you get injured, if you get sick, if you have financial problems, if you have, whatever, you feel all this guilt, even though you don't necessarily, you haven't necessarily done anything wrong. And guilt should only be used for that. If I like insulted you, and, then I can feel guilty. But, for falling sick and being in this horrible, miserable state, that wasn't my fault, and it takes a really long time to train your brain to realize that, and to work around that, because it's not helping. It's just this huge boulder on you that just makes you feel even worse, And if you just like chuck it off the cliff, then you feel a lot better.
And so looking at, do you feel that, with that, whether, your first book, the first, like how to build your art business, and then this most recent book on how to crush self-doubt, is there any aspects in that might be contradictory to each other, in the sense of there might, like, for instance, like thinking about like artists now that during the pandemic, like say if they don't have the creative energy to sit down and write, but they might be able to say, well, now I have to be on Instagram, I have to be on Twitter, and
it's I think a lot of it's actually really complimentary. Okay. So the way I talk about it in the first book is about respecting your limitations. I talk about that a lot, and I talk about that in the most recent book. And I have a whole chapter in the most recent book specifically for artists and creatives about like creative self-doubt, and things like that, and being like confident calling yourself an artist. It takes some of us a really long time. It took me a really long time to like confidently say, oh yeah, I'm an artist, like that's what I do. Even if it's just a side gig, like right. Lots of people will be like, oh, I draw sometimes, or, like they don't, like if you do artwork, you are an artist, Mm-hmm. If you've ever sold anything, then you're a professional artist. You've made money from your artwork. I mean, that's the definition, Mm-hmm. So if you want to call yourself a professional, even if you've only sold like a 50-cent sticker, you're a professional artist. Like it's okay to say that, and you don't have to hesitate or be, kind of wish-washy about it. You can just say it like you're an artist. Mm-hmm. And so, and once I started saying it more confidently, I got a lot less reactions of like, oh, what do you do with your real job? Like that kind of, once I started saying it more firmly and whipping out my business card, to show them, like, yeah, I do colored pencil. And then that's colored pencil? What? and it starts that conversation. And I got a lot less of those questions about, can you do this for free? Or, what do you do for your real job? Yeah. But yeah, so I think respecting your limitations is really important. Like I've had a sinus infection for the last 3 weeks, and I've had to lie down, when my son lies down, for like the last 3 weeks. So the audiobook I'm making of my book has been put on hold, until I can get rid of this. And then, just different things that have to be put on hold. That's why in my contract with commissions, I say no deadline, but I also think that sometimes you have to start something to get your creative muse going, Sometimes it's like exercising, right? Like, I should, I know it'll make me feel better. I don't really want to, but sometimes once you start, you're like, okay, yeah, like you get into it and you do feel better afterwards. And it can be the same with your creative work too, so it's, if you kind of start it, and then if you're still not feeling it, okay, you gave it a shot and you can back away and try to do something else. And again, I like to, if I feel well enough, I like to mix it up. Like if I try to do a drawing and I'm like, this is not working, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try writing. And I'm like, okay, that's not working. Okay. How about marketing materials? Like, okay. Or how about doing some research to try to find, where my next speech should be, or things like that. Like you can have lots of different things you can kind of fall back on to see what your brain's doing that day or whatever. Right. I also talk about like your working style a lot. And sometimes we don't realize what our like optimal working style is. It's, I have different working styles for different projects that I'm doing. When I'm writing, I really like it to be silent. Like when I'm reading or writing, like it just helps me a lot to be just silent. Mm-hmm. Especially when I'm writing fiction, which I'm writing my first novel.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, but
so exclusive. This is an exclusive announcement right now, huh? Look at that.
So stay tuned. So like, I need it to be silent to just get into my head, and really get into that mode and see what I'm talking about. And then when I'm doing artwork, I cannot have it be silent. I need music or like the TV going in the background with something probably that I've seen before, like West Wing. Just something to like keep me going. Right. It's been a little hard since I've gotten a little bit healthier because I do have a little more energy. Before I was stuck in bed and like didn't have the option to do anything else. And so I could sit there, and come back and forth energy wise for a drawing and get a lot done. And now I'm like, like kind of antsy, like it's harder for me to sit still now. But there's different working styles for different people. And lots of times you might think that like, okay, if you schedule out, your day, you're going to be super productive, right? I tried that. That didn't work for me. It was terrible. I was like the least productive I've ever been my whole life. But when I don't do a schedule, when I kind of do like a loose, idea of what's going on, I was way more productive, it's totally illogical, but it's what worked for me, and so to be more productive, which is part of the first book, right? How to be more productive, because when you have less time and energy, you want to be as productive as possible during that time that you have. And like efficient, and so I was like, okay, you gotta figure that out, like what play around with it, like play some music, see if it helps. I don't know, like maybe it would, and maybe it won't.
So, and also too, maybe this factors in a little bit on your second book as well. How explicit would you recommend artists to do on actually like creating a brand, or do you would say it kind of has to be organic, or what would be some of your advice on that?
I do talk about brand. There's a chapter in the second book about branding as an artist.
Yeah. And
it's hard as artists because some of us are very exotic. I don't know. Some of us are very, wild and outspoken. And, I know this woman who's amazing, and she wears like these super oversized, like paint covered overalls to all of her stuff, and like, I wouldn't do that. I want to wear like the, kind of nicer, like not super nice because Vermont, but, like kind of more professional stuff. And that's what makes me feel more comfortable. And I feel like I'm presenting myself, to people, and I want them to know that I'm a professional. Well, it's hard with artists because you want to be seen as professional and you also want to be seen as unique, right? And you want to be memorable and you want to be, all these different things. And so you got to find a balance between like, how do you represent yourself well professionally while maintaining that like creative integrity and kind of style of your own,
Right. Yeah.
And lots of times some branding will come, it'll just be, that's the type of artwork you like to do, and it's like, I do a lot of wildlife and colored pencil. Okay. I've been like deemed the colored pencil artist, like that's what people call me. They're like, wait a second, aren't you the colored pencil artist? Because they've never seen colored pencil like that before. And that sort of came organically. I didn't go into it doing that,
Right.
It just sort of happened, which is great because people could remember me better, right? And that's kind of the idea of a brand, is that you can remember something better, like the Nike swoosh, like you're gonna, anytime you see that, what it is,
Right.
And so for an artist, it's really hard because we don't necessarily have like a logo that's going to be on everything. I do have a logo and I put it on like my books and my website and stuff, but it's not necessarily, it's not like on each piece of artwork,
Right.
So it's difficult, but it's possible to try to figure out what is uniquely you and present that to the world in a consistent way. I think that's branding, is consistent marketing of your work. And so yeah, for me, semi-professional clothes and things like that. I mean, that's part of it when I'm out and about. But it's also like my business card, which I don't have with me right now. My business card is black and has 3 thumbnails of my artwork and the same kind of text that my website has. My website is also black and has the same type of images. My brochures do the same thing. So when they're lined up at a craft fair or something, you can tell that they all go together. They're all the same thing. It's all branded, right? Just by kind of looking similar.
Right.
And that way people kind of remember it better. And then, if something pops up like the colored pencil artist, like jump on it. You'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm the colored pencil artist. You might know me as, or like the sick artist, so just be open to whatever pops up, because sometimes you don't have control over parts of it.
Right.
It's just what people are going to remember. And people really remember stories, and I think part of my brand is my story, right? It's the sick artist falling ill and starting from bed. And that's how I started colored pencil and all these things. That's part of my brand now. It's not something I initially intended, it just sort of happened. And that's the story that people remember really well.
Right.
And so that's what happens, I mean, that's how you get word of mouth. You're like, I heard about this woman. She was really sick. She was in bed. She's like, she does this stuff with colored pencil. It's crazy, So.
And do you feel too like there's the benefit of kind of like diversifying your portfolio by writing books as well? Does that help or hinder, do you think, as for the branding process?
I don't know. So my business name is Karina Thurston Studios. It's Cat Studios.
Yeah.
And I made that business name back in 2015 when all I did was artwork.
Right.
And I specifically remember making it studios instead of art, because I don't know if I had an inkling or not about, that I would branch out. So that's my umbrella sort of organization, right? And then I mean, lots of times with branding, you don't want to branch out too much because you'll kind of confuse your audience, right? They're like, wait a second, do you do landscapes or do you do this or do you do abstract? Like what's happening here? You might even want different websites for different things, like you might want, I think before too long, my website is going to have like a top image of me and then almost, 3 different websites for art, speaking, and books, and you'll click on which one you're kind of there for.
Right.
And then you can, the art one would bring you to the website I have now, and, speaking one would do to like a smaller website that would just talk about that. And then the other one for books, to kind of separate it out just a little bit more.
Right.
But I also think, the books is how I started speaking. So I had a gallery in Burlington see the book and ask me if I'd be willing to come in and give a couple, presentations about like artist statements and business planning and that kind of stuff to their clients, and I was like, when I was in high school and I gave speeches, I broke out in hives. So sure. Seems like a good opportunity. So I was like, I should wear a turtleneck and put on some makeup. And, I was like trying to prepare myself because my anxiety was really high, like I said, anyway. Right. And literally I would break out in hives when I gave presentations in high school.
Right.
So it wasn't a logical leap for me, but I knew it would be good for me, pushing myself outside my comfort zone. Right. And I wondered if it could help other people. So I was like, sure, yeah, let's do it, and that's kind of how the TED Talk happened too. I was like, okay, let's do it.
And you also have another website too.
I do. This one's newer, and it's kind of based on, the most recent book and the TED Talk and stuff. I'm sort of branching into this happiness and self-doubt and, trying to overcome like anxiety and depression and things like that. Just because I think it's so prevalent in everything, everything that we do, everybody's struggling. And I don't think we realize it as much because we don't talk about it.
Right.
And I talk in my book, there's a chapter about being open. And I think it's really important and we don't do it enough, right. Be open about our struggles and what is happening. I've had like newspaper articles and TV appearances and stuff. And people always come to me afterwards and are like, you're so brave, and you're so honest. And you've made me feel so much better knowing that I'm not the only one dealing with, whatever it is, chronic illness or,
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. And it really moves me to do that. And I feel so good helping those people, but also like those people, a lot of those people are like, but I'm not willing to tell anybody else, even my closest friends, that I'm sick or whatever it is. So they're feeling, so touched by my story and feeling better about themselves because of it, but they're not willing to be open about their own struggles, which can help. It helps me, right, to process kind of those feelings and things. And it helps other people in ways that you would have no idea. People have come to me with things that I just blows my mind. People have been crying when they shake my hand after a presentation. And I'm just blown away. I had no idea that's the effect I would have.
Do you think too, with the, as we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for COVID, do you think that one of the benefits, I guess, of COVID-19 is now that we're in a shared trauma and it's going to normalize anxiety and stress, that people will be able to talk about it more?
So, yeah. There's definitely people who have never experienced it before who are now.
Yeah.
And there's people who are much worse, now, who had it kind of under control. Like I had my depression and anxiety pretty well under control. And then I gave birth. Yeah. And my system went totally out of whack and I have postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And I can't treat it really because I can't take any of the meds, right?
Yeah.
So how do you, when it's a physical system problem and like a thyroid and, other things, like, what do you do,
Right.
And so, that's what these techniques are for. It's to try and help with all of that. And it's funny because, so my sister lives in Essex and with her husband and her daughter, and we haven't seen them very much, she's in school, and it's high risk for, I'm immunocompromised and then we have a baby. And so we haven't been able to really see them. And we told them we had something to drop off one day and we were going to come up and just see them outside with masks on and they were like, oh my God, like, okay. And they were so like excited and anxious, at the same time. They're like, I need to do some dishes. I need to do some of this. I need to do that, to like waste the time before we got there, and we weren't even going to like really see each other.
Right.
But it was so like exciting and anxiety ridden, and it was like even just our family. Right. So it's really, and then it was sort of like, not anticlimactic, but it was great to see them, but you can't like hug them, right. You can't be like, here's the baby, like here, hold them. And so it's still really hard. But it was great, but it's, I think everyone's gonna be surprised at how they handle going back into society in a more normal way, Right. Yeah. Right. Daniel and I went to, I can't remember where we were, like Home Depot or something. And we'd barely been anywhere. It was like the first time and all of a sudden he was like, there's a lot of people in here. And I'm like, really? Like, you don't have social anxiety. I do. He's like, I feel like there's a lot of people. And there was like 4. So it's different. It's going to be a challenge. But I think you're right. I mean, I think we're talking about it more. Right. So hopefully we'll all kind of be like, yeah, me too. Like, yeah.
So Karina, we are now we're at our hour mark already. So yeah, we're going to run by quick. So, so where can people find your stuff if they want to follow you again?
Yeah, I mean, my website is myname.com. So CorrinaThurston.com. KarinaThurston.com. And then I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, Twitter a little bit. And just, yeah, I mean, and then findyourhappiness.info is the other one. So either of those is great, or Google me or Amazon or, any of those things.
Right. Yeah.
But
perfect.
And I'm always, people can reach out to me anytime. I answer all my own emails, and it may not be that day, depending on how I feel, but I get back to all of them. So,
right. And we should get you back. So it also looks like you have another book in the works, How to Think Like an Entrepreneur.
Yeah. So that will be coming out. I think I'm going to do the novel first.
Okay.
Which I'm, let's just say I'm done the first draft. So I'm getting there.
All right. And you should come back on the show and we'll talk about your fiction book then too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think working title is Fixation.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. It's about light fixtures. Is that what it's about?
Exactly. Yeah, thriller.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Karina. It was a genuine pleasure chatting with you. This has been great.
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Have a good one.
You too. Are those some of your artwork behind you? Are those your photographs?
Yeah. There's a photograph of us as a family, and then let's see. My tree frog is over there.
Okay.
We've got some the snow leopard. Oh, wrong way. Over there. But yeah, a lot of my artwork is around the house.
That's the good thing about making your own artwork. You never have to worry about like not having like empty spaces on your walls. You can always fill it up with something.
Yeah. No, it is nice. Like, oh, this room is green. All right, let's put in some green stuff. The room's blue. Okay, we'll do the kingfisher and the loon and